Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to another Hunter x Hunter Chimera Ant arc review. So, today we are going to be talking about the section of the Chimera Ant arc that I title The Palace Assault. It takes place in the 2011 anime between episodes 111 and 127. I don't know the equivalent of that in the manga, so I apologize, but those are the episodes of the 2011 anime that takes place in. There is a lot that happens during this section of the arc. It is extremely packed, and a good portion of it takes place in a very short amount of time, and it's insane. It's really hard to keep track of, so if I forget anything, or there's anything you might want to hear me talk about more or whatever, please feel free to ask in the comments. Um, and just as a note, as of when I'm recording this, I have finished the 2011 anime. I have seen the entire thing. Um, I do not know spoilers for anything beyond the end of the 2011 anime, though. So, no spoilers for anything past that, please. But anything up to that point, you can talk to me about. Um, that being said, so let's talk about this. So, the palace assault begins as Gon and the others come out of the portals that Nove made next to the staircase in the palace. They end up finding Yuppie waiting there on the staircase um, and begin this confrontation, this fight with him. And at first, it just seems like a standard fight, but it eventually goes into much more later on. While this is all happening, Chairman Netero and Zeno Zoldyck, Killua's grandfather, arrive and assault the palace a lot more directly. Zeno uses this dragon move. I forgot exactly what it's called, but to rain like this volley of attacks down on the entirety of the palace, and it's just this massive, massive attack. Um, we also get Netero's backstory during this time, but I don't really think it's that interesting. Like Netero, he's basically like, okay, this master martial artist. He did some training to improve his punching speed and power. That's pretty much it. So there's not really much to talk about there. But because of everything that just happened, Poof and Pito go to help the king, and it's found out that Komugi was heavily injured, like fatally injured by the attack. So the king orders Pito to heal Komugi with the Dr. Blythe summon of her Nen, or their Nen, or whatever pronouns you want to use for Pito. Because I don't know if I talked about this in a previous one, but from what I've gathered in the manga, Pito doesn't really have like a strict pronoun usage. And in the anime, it kind of goes by like just who's subtitling it or whatnot, basically. Um, so the anime I watched mostly referred to Pito as with she/her pronouns, but a lot of people stick with the they/them, and I think it's pretty much universally accepted that Pito is considered non-binary. So we'll try to go with they/them pronouns here. If I slip up, I'll probably just say she/her just because of what the anime said. Um, but we'll try to go with they/them pronouns. Anyways, so while all this is going down, Shoot and Knuckle are continuing to fight Yuppie with Melioron providing backup with his his invisibility powers. Moral goes off to find and fight Poof in the meantime. And Killua is looking for Pito and ends up helping out Ikago along the way. However, Ikago, who is disguised as Flutter at the time, ends up being noticed by Bloster, the blue lobster dude, and gains suspicion because of something he says. He mentions Hagia's name, but not knowing that Hagia changed his name to Leal. So it's like it kind of raises that suspicion, especially since Flutter and Leal were kind of working together a lot of the time. Um, Netero leaves the palace with the king while Zeno goes his own way. And during this time as well, the fight with Poof and Moral continues. Shoot fights Yuppie more directly while Knuckle helps protect him. Ikago is looking for Palm still while disguised as Flutter. Just all this stuff happening. I have this entire list right here. Just this entire list of like the events that happened. Just to try and remind myself, because there's so much. This is such a dense arc, but especially this section of the arc. So, while all these fights are happening, Gon and Killua end up eventually confronting Pito as she's healing Komugi. Gon, seeing Pito, gets very angry, like the angriest we've ever seen him, and he wants to fight them. But Pito is completely on the defensive because they can't use their Nen while healing Komugi. And they are under direct orders to heal Komugi from the king. So they kind of have to just strike up this defensive position, and even to the point of like slicing off their own arm to try and show fealty to Gon and prove that they're not trying to be a threat right here. Gon gets really upset by this too. It's like he's like going like, "Why are you helping her? Like, why are you trying to save her?" And it's like, "You're the bad guy," basically. But eventually, he kind of gives in and allows Pito to have a single hour to heal Komugi. But after that point, they have to go and restore Kite. So, I mean, Pito has to agree, so they do. And it just kind of goes at that point with Gon just sitting there watching Pito aggressively. um, yeah. During this time, we see Chitu again. He confronts Zeno as Zeno's leaving the palace and everything and tries to goad him into a fight. But then Silva, Killua's father, comes out of nowhere and just kills Chitu, just like that. Just lands right on him, killing him instantly. And it's like, oh, okay. I kind of like Chitu, too. I enjoyed his personality. I thought he was fun and everything. And he just dies just like that. He's just killed so much with a wave of a hand. And it's like, I'm almost a little disappointed, but at the same time, I kind of like how he was killed off. It was just so fast. Get it? Because he's Chitu. He's a cheetah. It was so fast. It was so sudden. It's a fitting death for him. So I think it works. As really sudden as it was. Yuppie continues the fight with Knuckle and Shoot. Shoot is like really going hard. Like even when he gets injured, he ends up using his hands, his Nen ability to fly him around and everything. It's a really cool fight, but there's not really much I can do to discuss it here. Um, it's it's not really it's something you more have to see than hear about, you know. Ikago is continuing to search for Palm, but ends up being cornered by Bloster, who is following him out of suspicion. Um, During this, Yuppie starts to unleash this ability that he basically just finds out about, where he can, if he gets angry enough, he basically explodes. And obviously, it doesn't hurt him or anything, but it creates this massive explosion that can damage the enemy. And so he decides to try and use this to try and use this to trick his opponents into getting closer to him and to letting their guard down. So, yeah, that's interesting. But while he's doing this, Killua suddenly appears and rains down lightning on his bitch ass. It is just, it is one of the coolest scenes, one of the coolest moments in the series, without question. Because it's like Yuppie just, it seems like Yuppie's about to win. It's even kind of, it's everything about the music, the scene, the way it's focusing on Knuckle. It makes it seem like Knuckle's about to die. And then all of a sudden, lightning just slams down on Yuppie, and it's like just this big, triumphant, epic moment. And I love it so much. And it's like, yeah, we get it. Kilo is my favorite character. You don't have to continue proving this to me. And he's my favorite for other reasons, just besides the badassery. But yeah, it was definitely like a really awesome moment there, without question. Um, Ikago ends up during this time outsmarting Blaster and uses a smoke screen. Well, not really a smoke screen, but like this knockout smoke from the elevator to render Blaster unconscious while he escapes the danger. Moral is conflicted about attacking Poof, as Poof has cocooned himself, and Moral doesn't know like what the right move to make at this time is. Um, but it's revealed that Poof has been tricking Moral and that he's been secretly like transferring himself like little bit by bit out of the smoke barrier during this entire time, and that the cocoon thing was literally just a ruse. So Moral lets the smoky jail release and ends up choosing to assist Knuckle in his fight against Yuppie, as Poof has already basically beaten Moral. He basically won, but there wasn't an actual fight. It was more of a contest of will, a contest of an intellect and whatnot. Netero starts talking to the king during this time. We get to see them just discuss things. Netero's trying to fight him, but the king refuses to fight back, seeing the value in Netero's life and his strength in general. Um, Poof goes to where Pito is and finds Gon there and learns the situation and everything. And so things kind of escalate with that a little bit, but nothing goes too bad. No fighting happens there. But Ikago does get involved in a fight with Welfin, this wolf guy who has a very strong sense of smell, but also is extremely paranoid constantly. Um, they get into a bit of a confrontation that eventually ends with Ikago remembering who both of them were prior to becoming Chimera ants, which jogs Welfin's memory, and it's realized that they were actually comrades serving under Gyro, the leader of the NGL. And it actually causes Welfin to kind of turn on the ants to a degree, although he's still kind of paranoid about it because it's Welfin. But it's a really interesting moment, and it shows Ikago's strengths, that they're not really with like physical combat or anything, but that Ikago has strengths in regards to honestly his intellect and his ability to talk through situations like this. And you have to give him credit. He did very well. You have to give him credit there. Ikago is like this character who very much could have just been a typical comedic relief character, but he actually ends up being really useful and really likable. You actually kind of root for the dude. um, Killua manages to find Palm, but realizes she's been turned into a Chimera ant. he fights her briefly, but manages to snap her out of Poof's control and allows her to join their side again and help Gon in the long run. Because, it's Palm and she kind of is obsessed with Gon, as creepy as it still is. Um, Netero is still talking to the king and actually manages to figure out a way to incentivize the king to fight. He tells the king that he knows what his name is because his associates were at the queen's deathbed when she gave it to him. The king, who has actually wanted to know his name and wanted his name and everything, accepts this, and the actual fight begins. During the fight, the king tears off one arm and one leg from Netero, and there's a huge parallel to this with the arm and the leg. I think it's the opposite arm and leg. No. I think it's the same arm and leg that Netero refused to use during the ball game he had with Gon and Killua during the Hunter exam. And it's like this great parallel from near the beginning of the series that is just fantastically handled. It's subtle too. It's like you wouldn't necessarily remember that. So but when you realize it, it's like, oh my god, that's genius. Damn, Takashi. um, Netero can't really do anything to Meruem though. And I'm probably gonna just call him Meruem from now on instead of the king. He can't. Netero can't really do anything. He's not really doing any damage, and he just keeps getting damaged himself. So he decides to suicide bomb Meruem. He blows himself up using this miniature weapon of mass destruction called the Miniature Rose. It's it's basically described as the worst, most horrific, most evil weapon there is. Um, and so Netero uses it, creates this massive explosion to kill Meruem. And it seems to kill them both. It seems that both of them are dead. At the same time, Pito completes healing Komugi, and Komugi is left in the hands of Killua and the others, while Gon and Pito go off to, well, to presumably heal Kite. Um, and at this point, Poof and Yuppie, who had noticed the explosion, go to find Meruem and find his charred body just completely void of much of any life at all, showing that Netero's bomb succeeded. And that is where this part ends. That is where this part ends with episode 127. And this section of the arc, like I said, was jam-packed with shit. There was just constantly things happening. The fights were pretty cool. There was a lot of really unique and interesting ways of fighting throughout this, from Shoot's just really interesting Nen ability, to the ways that Yuppie used basically raw power as his weapon. You got to see some fun little like mind games going on with Ikalgo as well. And the fight between Netero and Meruem, even though it was honestly very one-sided, was still pretty damn epic. Netero's Nen abilities, the Batastava, I think it's called, is insane, and it shows him off as easily one of the strongest Nen users we've seen in this series. And so when we see him, the fact that he's doing pretty much nothing to Meruem, that ends up being pretty damn scary, because it shows how strong Meruem truly is, with the fact that even one of the strongest Nen users we've seen in this series can't do shit to him, and that he's just continuing to be defeated. And this is something we kind of had known would happen, because earlier in the arc, Colt straight up told the chairman, straight up told Nuck or Moral and Nove that the chairman had no chance of beating the king, that there was no chance. So we kind of knew this. We kind of knew that this fight would not really end well. And to be honest, I did already know about Chairman Netero's death. I knew about that like before I started the series. So that was something I did know about. I didn't know how it happened or anything. I didn't even know when it happened. I just knew it was a thing. Because I also knew that the chairman election arc was kind of like a fallout from that. Um, but I'll talk about that when we get to that arc. um, but yeah, I really, really did enjoy this. But this is where one of my biggest issues with this arc was made very apparent to me. Um, and that's not to say I didn't love this arc. It's just saying like I definitely think this arc has notable issues, and this is one of the biggest ones for me. The pacing of it is not great. It's too fucking long. It is way too fucking long, and it drags certain things out way too long. There are certain fights in this section specifically, and the fact that a lot of it takes place during such a short period of actual time, it just feels so wrong that it takes place that in that short of time. But it also feels like it just drags. Like the events that are happening are interesting, but the actual pacing feels like it's dragging. And at times when you're watching, it's like you're kind of like wondering, like, okay, can we get to the point? Can we get to the actual like important stuff already? Um, because honestly, a lot of the stuff, like even though I ended up liking it, such as the stuff with Ikago, the battle, the continuing battle against Yuppie, all of that jazz. Although I still liked this stuff, it was very clear that it wasn't really that interesting comparatively to like Netero versus Meruem, for example. And it's like the entire time I'm like, I'm enjoying this, but I want to get to the important stuff. I want to get to Netero versus Meruem. I want to get to this other stuff, yada yada, so on and so forth. And it's like, it just kept dragging for me. And so it's like, it was made very apparent that this entire arc has been doing this. Not just this section, but this entire arc has been very much dragged out. And it just feels like there's just that Tagashi just tried to do way too much with the Chimera Ant arc, and that and because of it, it ended up coming across as very bloated. And it's just like I kind of wish that it was cut down a bit. That's just I really wanted to say that here. I just kind of wish it was cut down a bit, to be a little more like focused rather than just kind of like throwing everything at the fan and just going with it all. It was just too damn long. But like I said, the stuff that actually happened was great, and I love the actual events and the exciting fights within it. That's not my issue. It's the issue that it drags on so long because there's just so much happening. Um, but either way, this was both the most exciting and the weakest part of this arc for me. Weakest because of what I said regarding the pacing, but also the most exciting because honestly, some of the moments in this section of the arc were just really awesome. It was balls to the wall action almost the entire time, and was just really exciting, really fun, really like edge of your seat, nail biting entertainment. But it dragged on so much that it did kind of cut out a lot of that for me. That's why I say it's like kind of the both the best and the worst part of this arc. So yeah, I kind of just wish Tagashi had cut it back a little bit. There's just way too much thrown in there. But that means the next video will be our final Chimera Ant arc video before we move on to the chairman election arc. So the next video will cover episodes 128 to 136 in the 2011 anime and is covering what I refer to as just the end of Chimera Ant. It'll be our second to last video as well because the chairman election arc is the final arc in the 2011 anime, which is again how I experienced this series. So this is going to be our second to last review for this series, unless anything comes in the future. Which who knows if it will. There's apparently an entire other arc finished in the manga that they could animate. And then the one after that is still going, but with Tagashi's health issues and all, he's not able to get to it too regularly. So yeah, it's just, and I don't blame Tagashi. I don't at all. Like health issues, his health and safety comes first always. But at the same time, it's just like I'm just wondering like if it will be completed by him or if the plans for his wife Naoko Takeuchi to complete it will have to go into effect because that is the plan. He's from what I've heard, if he does end up passing before the series is completed, he's already told his wife Naoko Takeuchi what the full like what the rest of the series is going to be, so that she can finish it if that ends up happening. And she is a mangaka herself. She created Sailor Moon. So it's like, you know, she could handle it. And you know, she would probably handle it the way he wanted it to be handled, too. So it's like, the art might be a little different, but that's probably the only big change that would happen. But I hope that doesn't happen. I hope Tagashi's able to finish it. I hope he gets better. But we don't know. It's just it's hard to say right now. I really do hope he gets better though. Either way, so yeah, once again, next week we will be finishing off the Chimera Ant arc reviews, and then we will be moving on after that to the chairman election arc. And I'm saying next week because that is my plan. I can't guarantee it, but I am planning to get to this next week. So if it's not up next week, you can yell at me. Tell me to get to it because I've got the listing of what I need to talk about like all set down. So it's not like I have to worry about like remembering every little thing that happened. I've already got written down the bullet points and all. So, but yeah. So tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this section of the Chimera Ant arc, the Palace Assault? What did you think of these great battles that happened within it, these really exciting moments? What did you think of the pacing of it? Tell me all of that and more down in the comments below, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.